session. Today's panel title is Web3 Infrastructure is Powering the Next Generation of Digital Information. Yes, it sounds big, but in simple words, this session is about how Web3 will change our lives. Our goal in the next 1 hour is to break this big topic into something practical that easy for us to understand. Kalau boleh tahu, dari audiens ini ada yang kerja di Web3 projects ya? Just want to see. Okay, kita ada beberapa ya. It's good to know. So right now, Web3 is more than just a crypto. It is becoming the foundation behind many digital experiences we use or will soon use, like digital identity, payment, cloud services, gaming, to how creators and communities build and monetize their work. And Asia, especially Southeast Asia, is growing faster than almost anywhere else in the world in this space. But building Web3 at scale is not only about blockchain. We also need strong cloud infrastructure, trusted identity and compliance system, and powerful community and creator tools. These pieces have to work together to make Web3 safe, fast, and ready for everyday users like you and me. To explore that, we are lucky to have four amazing panelists today, leaders from cloud, compliance, gaming, and investment. Agung Sitata from AWS Amazon Web Services, bringing insight on cloud and technical infrastructure. T. Kok Hong from Samsung, a leader in identity verification and compliance. Roy Peck from Image, working closely with gaming, creator, and digital communities. And Humi-san, last but not least, from Whitebridge Capital, come all the way from Japan, with experience in Japan and regional ecosystem building. Together today, we hope that they help us to understand how Web3 is growing and changing in Asia, how real Web3 example that are really working for us today, and what challenges still exist, and last, how Southeast Asia can lead the next wave of digital innovation, especially when it comes from Indonesia. Before we jump into discussion, let's get to know our panelists a little bit better. I'll invite each speaker to briefly introduce themselves, your role, what the organization focuses on in the Web3 spaces, and the kind of work we involve in today. Just quick 2 minutes each. So let's start with Pak Agung from AWS.
Thank you, Pak Agung. So my name is Agung Sudata. Everybody can call me Agung. I'm working at AWS as a startup solution architect. My main role involves helping startups, including Web3 startups, to adopt AWS cloud service in order to grow their business. Jadi that's it.
You can call me TK. I'm the Business Development Director at Samsung. So this is my 20 months. Right? Prior to this, I spent almost 25 years in the cybersecurity space. Okay? At Samsung, we are a global all-in-one verification and compliance platform that empower businesses to secure the user's entire digital life cycle. From user onboarding to name screening, crypto wallet address screening, ongoing transaction monitoring, and fraud prevention. Right? Basically, to make sure that the legit user are being permitted into your platform. So currently, we are serving more than 4,500 customers across various industries, such as crypto, payment, marketplace, trading, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, TK. Now let's hear from Roy from Invest Group.
Hello, I'm the CEO of Invest Group. So basically for us, we do a lot of go-to-market solutions within Southeast Asia. So we focus on doing our products as well as assisting our clients. Our main clients are L1, L2s, as well as exchanges.
Okay, thank you, Roy. And lastly, we have Huni-san from But Bridge
Walaupun
Capital
naikin,
is for
dia tuh jadi kayak cuma segini doang nih.
Nah, maksudnya nanti tampilannya di situ gimana?
Tengahnya tuh nanti kayak V, tengahnya kayak V, kanan kirinya baru webcam kamera, double jadi kanan kiri.
Kanan kiri pembicara kan?
Kanan kiri, iya webcam pembicara ini.
Iya, jadi
Tengahnya nanti aku kayak V, tampil kayak V.
So
berarti saya harus ini.
Close up, sebenarnya lagi ngomong gitu.
Oke, bisa.
Nah nanti kan kalau udah aku munculin kan bisa disesuaikan lagi sama Om lagi nanti ya.
Iya.
Center sorry maksudnya. Jadi nanti center tengah. Pantau dari tadi Om ya. Kalau udah oke nanti baru langsung konekin
Okay,
aja.
perfect. Thank you to all our panelists. Now that we know everyone, let's jump into today's discussion. So our first topic, how Web3 infrastructure is evolving across Asia and what is actually driving that growth. I'd like to start with Agung from AWS. Agung, AWS supports a huge amount of the world's infrastructure from your perspective. First question, for people here who might not know much about cloud, how does cloud make building Web3 app faster or even easier?
Oke, jadi I will answer in bahasa ya Pak ya.
Of course.
Ya, jadi cloud provider menyediakan infrastruktur itu kalau teman-teman mau menggunakan infrastruktur semudah mengklik satu button kemudian infrastrukturnya langsung up. Nah, ketika teman-teman semudah itu menyalakan sebuah infrastruktur, entah itu server, database, atau apapun yang dibutuhkan, maka kecepatan pengembangan atau kecepatan untuk masuk ke production menjadi lebih cepat, sangat cepat. Jadi kuncinya adalah penyedia cloud provider memberikan simplicity, kesederhanaan dan kecepatan agar para teman-teman startup bisa mengembangkan produknya tanpa memerlukan tanpa perlu pikir-pikir terlalu lama tentang infrastructure management. Mungkin ini satu. Dan satu lagi, zaman sekarang kita mengenal istilah generative AI. Banyak pengembangan dilakukan dengan menggunakan AI. Amazon sendiri merupakan salah satu penyedia layanan AI variatif gitu ya. Dan salah satunya kita menyediakan layanan seperti Kiro yang memudahkan teman-teman melakukan pengembangan dengan bantuan AI. Mungkin itu.
Oh, amazing. So I think when we talk about Web3, sometimes it's a little bit, it's always combined with AI. So it's good to know that AWS support both blockchain and AI at the same time. So I guess my next question will be, for bigger company in Asia, what is the major shift you're seeing when they move from Web2 to Web3? Because AWS is very famous in the past was Web2, now we are focusing on Web3.
Banyak perusahaan yang saya lihat kalau mau bergerak ke Web3 itu mikirnya kayak gini. Kalau di Web2 data kan dan aplikasi kan semua di server mereka. Entah mereka taruh di on-prem atau taruh di cloud, semua adalah milik mereka. Sementara ketika di Web3, Anda teman-teman perusahaan itu jadi berpikir kan, kita sekarang berbagi kontrol dengan apa? Dengan smart contract, dengan distributed protokol, dengan decentralized trust. Nah, hal seperti itu yang menjadi pertimbangan. Nah, ini di situ ada sebuah shift, nggak cuma technical shift, tapi mindset. Bagaimana caranya perusahaan Web2 berintegrasi dengan blockchain, tapi tetap secure, reliable, dan sesuai dengan regulasi yang berlaku. Jadi di situ sih.
Okay, that's interesting. Can you share what AWS do that a lot of Web3 startup use the most, which is can help to get into the market as fast as possible?
Ya, kita punya beberapa service yang sering dipakai, tapi yang paling sering umum dipakai adalah containerization service kita, seperti Elastic Kubernetes Service atau Elastic Container Service. Itu karena walaupun company membuat produk Web3, mereka tetap membutuhkan back-end, front-end yang stabil, kuat, dan bisa diskalakan dengan cepat gitu ya. Jadi di situ dan kemudian auto scaling kita yang lebih sering yang sering banget digunakan oleh startup Web3.
Thank you, Anggun. Let's give us a clearer picture of the technical background from AWS. Now, if we talk about infrastructure, security and trust are just as important as cloud. So I want to move to TK from Samsung. TK, Samsung works with some of the biggest names in identity and compliance. So I want to ask, what is identity verification such a big deal, especially for Web3 today?
Yeah. So the reason is because my personal opinion, it is a core enabler of Web3 platform. Right? It's a core enabler. Now, all of you know that Web3 removes a lot of intermediary, but it doesn't remove the need of trust. Especially when you have digital asset moving across globally and anonymously. Right? So hence, a strong identity verification will create the trust layer that's required to protect the user, right? To secure the asset and prevent fraud from happening, prevent bad actor from coming into the network and exploit the network itself. At the same time, if you look across the region, regulation is no longer an option, right? Governments, regulators now are enforcing. For example, like virtual access service provider, they are now enforcing travel rule requirements. They are now enforcing the new KYC AML standards. Now, all this is required to create a secure environment so that the Web3 platform can provide a trusted layer for user to adopt.
Yes, when I joined Sunrise Exchange Crypto, when I first heard about the travel rules, I thought like when someone have to go to another country, then they have to declare their assets, right? Then so that's not what it is.
Yeah, Iman, that is exactly happened to me. When I joined Samsung, when I heard about this travel rule, I was like asking myself, why do I need to comply in order for me to travel from one country to another country?
Yes.
I still can't comprehend why the name travel rule. But for those of you who want to know what is travel rule, it is equivalent to SWIFT in the traditional financial system.
So when people hear the terms like eKYC or chain identity, in simple word, how will identity change in the future?
Okay, so personally, I'm still new to on-chain identity, but I do know one of the capability is what they call protocol credential. In other words, once you basically verified once, you KYC once, you are allowed to seamlessly reuse the credential across multiple platforms. Right? The result of this is it creates a frictionless, or I want to call it frictionless, because there's always a friction. There's always a friction, right? So I call it a frictionless. Alright, so that and also to provide a interoperable identity framework. Yeah, that is basically to basically protect the user, to protect the asset.
So you say basically just one KYC it can be used across different platforms,
That is
Sunrise
correct.
Exchange,
Correct.
decentralized.
Yeah. So instead of the identity, instead of account owned, it now becomes user owned. Okay, so you have more privacy and other benefits.
Yeah, I guess we all know sometimes KYC very annoying. Every time we go to a new platform, we have to do KYC. By having single KYC, I think it will make things very seamless, right?
Yeah.
And then,
Frictionless.
what is the hardest part about onboarding users across region in Southeast Asia?
So if you look at the ASEAN region, I think the biggest problem is the region itself is extremely fragmented. Every country has its own rules and regulations. Let's take virtual asset service provider as an example. The travel rule requirements, the adoption, the the adoption to maturity level are very different. So it actually creates a complexity. So you basically cannot have a single onboarding workflow that works everywhere. Yeah? So that is the biggest challenge. Another challenge will be the ID landscape. There are a variety of ID documents in different formats, different languages. In certain markets, there's a lack of government database like that we can cross-check against. So for example, like Indonesia, you have Dukcapil, where service provider like us can cross-check. Or in Singapore, we have SingPass. But in Malaysia, we don't have such database that allow service provider like us to cross-check. Yeah. So these are some of the key challenges that we face in the region.
Thank you, TK. That's super important, especially like bringing KYC to multiple platforms, just with a single KYC. Now, let's look at another big driver of adoption: gaming, creator, and digital communities. So I'd like to bring Roy from Emerge Group. Roy, your work spans gaming, IP, KOL, creator, ecosystem. Let me ask, how is Web3 helping creator, gamers, digital communities, and brand live in a new way?
I think that's a great question. So first and foremost, there are a few issues. I'm going to break it down into probably the core two ones. First one will be accessibility. So firstly, when it comes to, let's say, creator IPs, most of them don't want to get monetization. On the traditional landscape of things, if you don't reach a certain skill, it's very tough for you to monetize. And most of them have to go through certain fees, they have to go through a lot of traditional frictions for them to be able to monetize well, for them to be able to get that. Whereas for Web3, you have seen a lot of platforms that utilize this, for example, Taito, we have seen Cookie Tree, even our own that we recently just pushed out, Creatify as well. So there's that whole piece of success. When you create the content, it's easy for them to get a payout directly by their crypto. And there's that sort of also waiting for payments, as the traditional scene always calls. So you might do a job in the way of those spaces. You might do a job in the way about 3 months later, right? Which obviously is, some of them definitely demand something upfront, but there's a lot of those issues that we face as well. So that's point number one in terms of accessibility. Point number two, I would say monetization, that's for sure. It's ease of doing monetize the products, especially for gaming. We have seen, I would say there are a lot of traditional use cases in Web2 that still does very well in terms of monetizing their assets, monetizing their in-game items such as like CS2, Dota 2, but how many of them do really be able to monetize their assets, especially within Southeast Asia. We have seen big games like Honor of Kings, which is big, it's huge. Mobile Legends obviously is crazy here as well, but there's still the unique sort of monetization model in terms of like transferable skills. Right? That's point number one for gaming. Right? Point number two is in terms of how do we have that sort of cross-border payments within gaming that's facing that sort of difficulties as well. Especially when you are able to lock money in, it's tough for you to withdraw the money out. Right? Because of the various regulations such as like, for example in Singapore, Payment Services Act and so on and so forth. So yeah, definitely there's sort of difficulties for sure.
Interesting. Can you share one success story where blockchain helped creator own or monetize their content?
Actually, there are a lot. And I think the most successful case study previously was definitely NFT shows. You've seen designers themselves, they create their own IPs and successfully monetize them, right, through royalties, right? Even though definitely, we've seen NFTs going down the drain recently, but back then during this, I saw that, for example, every single transaction, the designers themselves, the IP creators themselves are able to monetize the royalties, which is so seamless, right, as compared to something like traditional royalty payments takes months or even years for them to be able to collect. So with that sort of, that's point number one. Point number two is the sort of transparency in terms of receiving the royalties, because most of them, I'll say music artists for example, right, they create their own music online. It's very tough for them to track, in terms of a transparency landscape, but with blockchain itself, it's definitely much easier.
Okay, great. So now, like in terms of gaming, many games now run on multiple blockchains. I think a lot of people here are like to play game. So why should they consider to play game on Web3? What is the biggest benefit for players to play Web3 games?
Yeah, global play the level markets I mean, everyone here should have known that Web3 gaming has taken a huge hit for quite a while. And I think the core rationale behind it is that they are too focused on the wrong things. I think game monetization, which everyone is saying, yeah, we know we have to have game monetization. And that is kind of like a glorified consumer in my personal opinion. The reason how you can really sustain, and if you look at most of our top projects in Web3, how they really sustain is really generate revenue. Right? It should be a revenue-focused project. But blockchain itself is to provide that sort of facilitation of payment, facilitation of escrow, right, a smart contract verification. They shouldn't be putting too much focus on making that in-game monetization because it's just a Ponzi effect at the end of the day. You're just taking this money, putting it. But whereas if they focus a lot on revenue, there's that sort of revenue accrual token, there's much more focus, much more bullish as well.
Right, great insights, right? And of course, when we talk about Web3 success story, Japan is always part of the conversation. So next, let's go to Huni-san from Buzzbridge Capital. Huni-san, Japan has one of the strongest community-driven Web3 market. So my question is that, how does that influence Web3 adoption?
So they always become the primary gateway to translate comments and products and something people can trust images. And so their interface always concerning users understanding and adoption across Japan. So we business, so we see the combination of Japanese trust-based culture and self-sustaining fast-moving brand, which are very good combination of powerful driver for healthier and long-term infrastructure use.
So, as a Buzzbridge Capital, from your expressive perspective, right, what helps early Web3 projects grow as a project?
For early stage projects, the success depends less on marketing, but more on the education, storytelling, and trust building. So, especially in Japan, if users don't understand the mission or narrative of the project, it's very hard to do it. So,
So, what opportunities do you see in Japan and Southeast Asia cooperation?
I see very big potential, big potential in Japan situation. So the reason is simple. Both sides complement each other extremely well. So Japan might have strong IPs and also high quality product and very trustworthy culture. The C, on the other hand, is young, trustworthy, and very open to new ideas. So especially in the Web season. And when we put these strengths together, I think we will get a powerful combination. Japan brings trust and C brings speed. So we see new ideas can be scaled quickly. In Japan, users are loyal, long-term, and community is very stable. So overall, I believe the future of Japan's cooperation is about bringing the best outputs.
Well, thank you all. Now we have seen how Web3 is growing. I want to shift into something equally important. What's still holding us back? Let's talk about the barriers to scale Web3 infrastructure across Asia. So now back to AWS. starting with your game, what is the most common mistake Web3 startup make when doing scale?
Ada dua ekstrim nih kalau apa namanya kita ngomongin common mistake gitu ya. Ekstrim pertama adalah over provisioning. Jadi ini pengalaman pribadi saya aja. Saya pernah kerja di mungkin nggak secara langsung di web startup tapi membantu web startup. Dan yang saya lakukan adalah membantu mereka cost optimization 75% dari costnya, tapi tetap jalan. Jadi dan kita ngomongin angka in billion of rupiah gitu ya, dalam miliaran rupiah. Itu ekstrim yang pertama. Ekstrim yang kedua, common mistake-nya adalah they don't design for scale from the beginning. Jadi sangat betul kalau cloud infrastruktur bisa membantu untuk scale dengan cepat, tapi tetap dibutuhkan desain arsitektur yang mumpuni gitu ya, yang benar agar ketika scale terjadi mereka bisa go from hundred of user to thousand or even to million of user in very fast gitu. Ini dua ekstrem itu yang saya lihat.
So that's the next question is, how can mixing cloud and blockchain solve real problems?
Itu pertanyaan yang sangat menarik. Kalau kita lihat, kita mungkin harus lihat dulu karakteristik dari masing-masing. Cloud karakteristiknya adalah untuk fast computation, untuk komputasi yang cepat, untuk large data storage, untuk penyimpanan data dalam jumlah masif, gitu kan. Untuk auto scaling, scale dari kecil ke besar dengan cepat, itu karakteristiknya cloud. Karakteristiknya blockchain adalah immutability, decentralized trust, smart contract, dan token ekonomi. Nah, jadi salah satu use case yang bisa dilakukan adalah yang bisa saya kasih contoh. Tadi ada juga kan teman di sini yang dalam bidang gaming. Bayangkan kalau kita membuat sebuah game, pemrosesan dan user data disimpannya di cloud, tapi ownership dari mungkin digital asset di game tersebut, ownershipnya itu disimpan di blockchain. Nah, itu bisa menjadi satu integrasi dan kolaborasi gitu. Another yang lain adalah contoh supply chain. Data-data dari supply chain seperti data-data telemetri dari IoT atau data-data dari vendor user profile semua disimpan di cloud, tapi certificate of ownership dari tracking dari ownership dari supply chain material tersebut disimpan di blockchain. Menurut saya itu adalah mixing cloud dan blockchain.
Interesting. Jadi basically kita bisa cloud dan blockchain bisa berjalan bersama. Jadi bukan harus akses. Mungkin pertanyaannya kalau dari aku yang lihat kalau untuk founders ataupun yang kita yang bekerja di project Web3 ini, yang dukungan apa lagi sih yang kita bisa yang bisa dibutuhkan?
AWS memberikan berbagai macam dukungan untuk founder Web3. Salah satunya dia saya sebut 3 aja. Yang pertama kita memberikan technical guidance. Jadi tadi yang saya sebutkan extreme over provisioning sama extreme design for scale itu bisa kita mitigate dari awal. Tidak nunggu ketika produknya udah mulai gede baru kelihatan nih di mana salahnya. Ya kan gitu. Yang kedua AWS sendiri membantu yang tadi saya bilang optimisasi cost. Jadi provider saya nggak mau sebut saya nggak sebut kami, tapi maksudnya saya dengan bangga boleh bilang kalau AWS adalah provider yang willing to help startups, actually startup dan even beyond of the startups untuk optimize their cost, karena itu merupakan salah satu dari KPI gitu. Padahal kalau optimize cost itu sebenarnya mengurangi revenue ya, tapi we are giving that service. Dan yang nomor 3 saya lihat AWS bukan cuma teknologi partner, AWS adalah ekosistem partner juga. Jadi kalau teman-teman yang mungkin menyaksikan ini bisa lihat ke sebelah sana, itu adalah startup yang bekerja sama dengan AWS dan kita coba bantu secara ekosistem. Jadi ekosistem startupnya itu sendiri berkembang gitu. nggak hanya dari sisi teknologi tapi juga dari sisi bisnis, ke industri, dan juga ke ekosistem seperti acara hari ini. Dan teman saya di depan ini Bapak Berata bisa kontak kalau memang ada yang tertarik untuk GTL.
Oke, betul benar. Pengalaman saya pribadi ya sebelum saya join di Toko Crypto, saya juga udah pernah mengerjakan Web3 Games dan itu saya disupport dari tim AWS Activate. So, jadi kalau buat kalian yang mau jadi bikin project nanti bisa kontak Pak Agung atau Pak Prata yang duduk di depan tuh yang ganteng tuh, ya yang ganteng yang perfect fit. So, ya sini bisa dikontak langsung ya. Thanks, Pak Agung. Now let's look at challenges from the compliance and regulatory angle, which can be even more complex. TK, what is the biggest compliance problem in Web3 company under SD?
Okay, so I'm going to use virtual asset service providers.
Okay.
So many of them have actually underestimate the travel rule requirements. To be honest, travel
I like it.
Many of them think that it only applies to certain country and you only required to perform wallet risk. But you and me know that the moment there is a sender and receiver of crypto asset, especially across border, you are required to share and track the transaction. You're supposed to share the originator and the counterparty information between the virtual asset service provider. So this is one of the things that I underestimate, right? Now the other thing is when you talk about travel rule adoption, every country is at different stages, right? Adoption, as I mentioned to you earlier. And not only that, they also adopted different messaging protocol. Okay, for example, like the WAPs in Korea, most of them are using code messaging protocol, and Japan are using Signal, if I'm not mistaken. And code is also mainly used by Southeast Asia. Now, if you do not communicate this in the messaging protocol that they support, you basically can't complete the transaction. So potentially create additional friction to the user. Transaction may be blocked or transaction may be denied. So this basically create a gap again, failed transfer, regulatory rules, especially during the cross-border transactions.
Understood. So I guess we all need to pay attention to the rules for different countries. So how do different rules across Asia slow down? Does this slow down the adoption? Right? Do you see this as something that can benefit the industry, or it's like something that actually is slowing down the adoption?
It definitely, I think first and foremost, it definitely create a massive operational friction, right? So you cannot just have one onboarding flow and then apply it to multiple transactions, right? So you basically have to create a different onboarding flow. So this actually create additional cost and slow down the transaction. And like I said, the transaction can be blocked, it can be delayed if the counterparty does not respond to your request. Doesn't respond to your request. So until we move to more aligned standards, virtual asset service provider will continue to face challenges. Right? So this, I mean, the Web3 growth will remain slower than it should.
That's a little bit unfortunately, but I guess the intention of this compliance thing is that basically to make us Web3 safer for Web3 users, right? What else do you think we need to improve to make Web3 safer?
This is where I'm going to wear my sales cap. So basically what Web3 needs is a unified, all-in-one, very verification and compliance platform, right? That allows you to do off-chain identity verification with on-chain wallet administration. Okay? To allow us to detect or to protect users, transaction, protect the asset, and to prevent, unauthorized or illicit transaction that happens.
Okay. Thank you, DK. Now, shifting to gaming and creator ecosystem, which often scale faster than other Web3 use cases. So, Roy, Image Group, what is the hardest part of building Web3 gaming at large scale?
Hardest part, not just for websites, but getting new users. Let me get a question. Let me understand that. Since when do we see like a huge wave of people was the retail market? Yeah, I mean, retail faces. And we have to understand that right now, you're seeing a huge landscape of that. Even though there's a big push in Bitcoin and so on and so forth, I mean, the stable coins, institutional market and all that. Back then, when we see the biggest push up was definitely retail. And we need to have a retail consumer coming out. We need a new, huge wave of users coming out. I personally feel the next one that we're very focused on is crypto. The creator economy, because they're able to influence. And if you look at that on the NFT side, who are the ones that's really pushing? The celebrities that are famous, big icons, because they have consumer families, they have customer purchasing power. It's the matter of volume, unfortunately, it's true that we're lacking there right now. Regardless, it's not just a banking issue or creator issue, it's just an industry-wide lack of new users. Currently, my personal feeling to pay the level of the gates. It's currently a musical chair in my opinion right now, the Web2, it's just everyone is just on like mix. It's still a single market, but in order for us to really have seen a huge, I would say not just a push of innovation, but also a huge shift of activity, I would say that we definitely need an angle to kind of attract all the new users to come. That's my personal opinion.
So, where does infrastructure still feel greater or gains to? Does infrastructure play a part in terms of helping you to grow, to scale?
I feel right now the infrastructure is around, to be honest. We are researching and structuring during a big plan, and we are able to just lock in with the Google account or a financial revolution. And honestly, that is a big push for gaming, not just for gaming, but for any sector right now. Because you lower the barrier of onboarding, it makes things much easier. It's lesser friction, lesser information area. With lesser friction comes more user willingness. And if you look at it from even the Web2 perspective of it, if you need like 3 or 5 clicks in order for you to get to where you want it to be, there are a lot of user traffic very costly. So I think the infrastructure for us is honestly quite decent. What I feel we are lacking is proven pieces. There's the new wave that we can come up. There's the new shiny new object that we are looking at.
So, what can we do? What do you think we need to do for Web3 gaming to become more mainstream? How can we compete with some other games already on the market?
That has been the number one question everyone has. But my personal thing is you just need to make it fun. Right? There has to have fun and living. Second is there has to be sort of continuous meta improvement. If you look at Mobile Legends, the reason why they have been so, I would say, able to scale is that there's a lot of patches, there's new markets, new heroes, new skills, we do a lot of collabs with different companies to make the user interaction. In my personal opinion, I think when it comes to gaming, or anyone who has experience in gaming, user acquisition is the easiest thing to do. Honestly, to do ads, easiest thing to do. Like a clickbait, page bait, whichever you want to do. It's the user retention and stuff. And to figure out the economy of skill, where you want them to constantly buy, for example, like a beta pass, for you to install video account, I think that's the most important thing that people are united, or most of them not focusing on making the Web3 gaming studios.
Wow. So, I used to work on Web3 gaming, so I wish I remember the time so I can learn all these tools to grow my hear from challenges from Japan, Asian ecosystem perspective from Kunisai. Kunisai, many projects struggle to build strong. What is missing in the ecosystem?
I think also we will see this as a thing,
So the next question is how does Japan build safer and stronger Web3 communities?
Japan's Web3 frameworks Japan's approach can serve excellent influence for countries of East Asia, looking to build safer and more Asian Web3 environments.
So from Indonesian and Southeast Asian perspective, we saw a lot of good projects from Japan, right? But what stopping them coming to Southeast Asia? Is it because of language barrier? Because this connected a lot of Southeast Asian learn East Asian.
Of course, one problem is value, but I think more overseas countries, right? So how Japanese works is really different than global markets, especially Southeast Asia and China, US. And when we need to emphasize Japanese, right? How they make things happen. Everything that takes a long time. Very long time. You cannot keep the pace as fast as website. So this is very different. And also, it's Japan with a lot of IPs and games, that's very complicated. So there are many, let's say, Pokemon that are made Pokemon cards, made
So just now, before our session, we were talking about we are also looking for Indonesian projects that want to expand to Japan. Jadi kalau dari audience ada yang kerja di Web3 gaming, yang thinking, yang mikir like mau expand ke depan, definitely we will talk to Kunisai. Yeah. So now that we covered all the challenges, let's see into the fun part, right? Opportunities and real use cases. This round is quick, around 2 minutes each. I'll start again with Agung. Agung, what real use case or Web3 excite you the most right now?
This is my own personal perspektif ya. Perspektif pribadi saya sangat senang dengan gaming saat ini. Alasannya karena simple. kesini 2 hari kemudian gitu kalau dibayar. Kita kan ya dipotong pajak lagi kan. Kalau dengan payment use case blockchain dan stablecoin, that is really helpful untuk kita dapat uang lebih cepat dan pajak yang tidak bahkan tidak ada di dalam kita kan. Mungkin itu ya saya.
Okay. Yes, I totally agree with you. I think it's the same question for TK. Like, what will use case is actually exciting the most? And who do you think which industry in Asia will benefit from this?
I mean, personally, I'm very excited about the tokenization of real asset.
Yeah, that's a classic.
So because why am I excited? Because it allows me to own a fraction of the asset that previously I can't afford to own it as a whole. Yeah? So now I can actually purchase a fraction of land or building and so on and so forth, commodity or precious metal. At the same time, it also allows me to trade 24/7. That's why I'm so excited about the tokenization of real assets. And the industry that will benefit this, I think, will be the real estate and the commodities.
So you're saying like even with 5 million I can invest to buy a condo?
Yeah, a fraction of it. A fraction of it.
I think
It's an investment. It's an investment. Right? So if you look at the current traditional way of buying a stock, we have to buy 100 unit or 1,000 unit. Right? In future, you can buy a unit, and today's stock you can only trade 5 by 5. Right? In future, you can trade anytime, just like crypto, right? I can purchase, I can buy and sell anytime.
Yeah, right. Pretty much the same question. What will use case is actually exciting the most?
Going back to this is like many decentralized credit. The reason because when you don't understand, unfortunately, the country is an action economy. Everyone has ADHD. And it's shocking attention, so it's always fighting up attention. Understanding, and I feel that we can get credit economy is one of the most, I would say, very use case for this. So I personally feel that credit economy, we need to bring the new web to creators. So we don't get infrastructure, which fortunately we are trying to build that as well as our Congo. Is for them to bring the next wave of web to creators as well. It makes things easier and much more, I would say, equal opportunity for them who will live and for more country banks to be able to work in the system.
So next, Melissa, what will use case is actually exciting the most?
Japan is still in great progress. So yeah, everything up even enormous is still substantial. But actually now what's really proposed is innovation a lot. So now the Japanese government they really see stable coin as a
Alright, so we are almost go towards 1 hour. So the final segment, I'd like to each of you share your outlook, like try to predict what you will see in the next few years, right? So back to Agung again. What will be Web3 infra looks like in the next 3 to 5 years? And what we can need to build just as ahead?
Oke, Web3 Infra kalau sekarang itu kan sedikit perlu user atau customer-nya untuk adaptasi gitu ya. Contoh wallet lah paling gampang. User mesti simpen itu private key-nya itu kan mnemonic ya, sebutannya mnemonic. I think 3 sampai 5 tahun lagi dia will disappear. Karena menurut saya itu ada udah ada yang mulai membuat itu jadi lebih apa ya, lebih frictionless ya istilahnya buat user. Jadi karena kalau kita ngomongin Web3 infra yang paling utama adalah gimana user mengadopsi aplikasi tanpa friction dan gimana experience-nya seperti Web2. Itu belum terjadi sekarang, tapi menurut saya 3 sampai 5 tahun lagi itu akan berubah dan sudah akan terjadi seperti itu. Another thing yang saya lihat sebagai outlook adalah interaksi antara AI dengan Web3 atau dengan crypto. Jadi saya melihat banyak startup yang juga udah mulai mengembangkan AI agent untuk misalkan trading crypto atau melakukan transaksi dengan crypto gitu ya. On top of tentunya industri seperti gaming yang masih akan terus berkembang dengan crypto dengan Web3 lah. Seperti saya bilang digital asset ataupun apa namanya mungkin mengadopsi crypto Web3 login ataupun payment Web3 payment di gamenya. Kurang lebih seperti itu sih yang saya lihat dari sisi infrastruktur Web3.
That's very sisi problem ya. TK, how about you? What do you see Web3 infra looks like in the next 2 to 5 years?
So I've actually listed here 3 things that is very essential, right? To make Web3 infrastructure mainstream. The first is basically I'm going with Pak Agung is frictionless or frictionless onboarding, right? Obviously this is needs to be supported by a unified identity and compliance platform. The second thing is, which is also extremely important, is to create trust level. So you basically need an enterprise-grade security and trust level that matches the traditional financial system. Right? That is very important. And thirdly is the interoperability. Right? So that the builder can comply to cross jurisdiction. Okay? When this come together, all these 3 come together, Web3 will become usable, safe, and ready for mass adoption.
I like that. I believe that the next 5 years, there's more and more people involved in the Web3, not just as a member, but really the real use case. Right, what do you think? How will Web3 look like in the next 2 to 5 years?
I see it being super regulated and behaving regulated.
Which is a good thing or is a bad thing?
I mean, there's always 2 sides of the coin. There's always 2 sides of the coin. So, what can you find good? I feel that the regulation is going to be down for new development, that's for sure. Unfortunately. Because they will be limiting the, I would say, buying opportunities of newcomers. Because if you look at stocks, there's a lot of patience. It needs to be each group is one in terms of it, and others maybe currencies and so forth. There are a lot of different limitations. So liquidity is very much less the first point of view. Point of view is that for projects, there are some projects which are still with regulations because we need to fulfill certain, for users it's KYC, for brands it's KYC itself. I mean similar to like having a prospectus for your obviously not the number of business or some from the detail level. I feel that will be one. Regulations will be much but then again, with regulation there will be more adoption as well, right? Which means there will be more rewards, governments, consumers, payments, and so on and so forth. So I do definitely agree that there's two sides of the coin, just depending on your projects, especially which side you're stepping on. That's for sure. Yeah, so no big points on that.
Well,
I just want to add on.
yes.
Basically, you need to find the balance between user experience and the trust. If you increase the trust, for sure the user experience will grow. So you need to find the balance.
Yeah, then I think I agree. If I see from the perspective of the real user, I think the more regulations, I think it's much much safer for a lot of people to jump into Web3. So yeah, it's good and bad, but I think ultimately to improve, to boost our Web3 innovation. So continue to Vinisa, like what do you see Web3 in the next 3 to 5 years?
So over the next 3 to 5 years, the three platforms will around, I think, 3 changes. One is CBS and UBS. CBS connects and trust compliance and Asia networks, Asian networks. So first, Web3 will become seamless with users no longer mixing their usage of chain. Second, trust and compliance frameworks will mature, bringing enterprise and institutions into Web3 at scale. So, mainly I think Asia will lead in this market. So, now Web3 will become seamless, easier, and safer, and what to say, this really shift
I guess by making Web3 safer, I also have more confidence to bring my nephew and nieces introduced to Web3. So, everyone, that's pretty much like the core section of all these panelists already share their insight about the Web3 infrastructure, how it will change our life in the future. And we still have a few minutes. I just want to check whether we have any question from the audience. This is your chance to ask all these panelists. So now, since we're kind of running out of time, no question. I guess I would say we'll close this panel. Thank you to all our panelists and thank you to everyone here being with us today. From our discussion, we learned that Web3 is not just about blockchain anymore. It's about many pieces working together. Things like cloud services, identity check, saver platform, and tools that help people and creators build new digital experiences. We also heard that Asia, especially Southeast Asia, has a big opportunity. People here know new technology quickly and there's a lot of talent. But to really move forward, we need to work together across countries and industries. Once again, thank you to all our panelists for sharing their insight, and thank you all for joining us. Enjoy the rest of Indonesian Blockchain Week and have a great afternoon. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dema and also all the panelists. Please on the stage, we will have a big shot together first. Okay, please stand up. Ya, kami mengundang kepada tim dokumentasi dan juga tim sosial media untuk bisa menuju ke depan panggung untuk mengambil foto bersama para panelis kita dan juga our moderator today. Thank you so much for Kakak Agung Sidarta, Ikom Ong, Mr. Roy, and also Budisan, and also Donatio from Toko Crypto. Let's have a picture together. Okay, di mana official cam-nya?